they say that about work-life balance, right? So the work-life balance has always been, there's been a dissonance in my mind, because the moment we say life-work balance, it means there's a trade-off, right? So it's like thinking of a scale like this, and then saying, maybe we'll have to take something from here and put it this side, and maybe take something from here and put it this side. That's what a balance is, right? So it's a trade-off between two things, between work and life. And I've been very uncomfortable with that type of a thought process, right? Because in my mind, these are two different things. Okay, think about, work on one side as one axis, x-axis, and life as another axis, y-axis, right? So you can't balance this and this, but you can have both of this. You can have zero of this or a zero of this, that's fine. But the point is you can't say, okay, let me take something from y and give it to x. That's not possible. So there are two different dimensions, okay? So let's think of y-axis as, life, and this is work, right? Now, if you only have work, you don't have any life, you're a workaholic, right? If you only have life and you don't have work, you're retired. Okay, so what we really want is to be here. High on life as well as work. High on life and work. Both are required. Okay. And I think several of you, when you shared your stories today, that's what you're experiencing, right? You're experiencing both life and work and being high on that. And this is a constant journey. It's a never-ending journey. We keep kind of figuring out how do we do better and go higher and higher, right? So that's the journey. Now, there's a deeper concept in this two axes, right? Now, let's rename this. Let's think about this axis, the y-axis, as feelings, right? And this axis as things and feelings. Things, okay? Material things, or things that you can, tangible, you can measure, you can kind of feel what it is. Okay, so now let's take an example of a thing like a house. Okay, I want a big house. So that, kind of totally focused on the house, all the time, house. And therefore, I buy a very big house and I take a lot of loan and make sure that I get that house, right? So I got the thing, which is the house. But what about the feeling? What about, I have to pay the debt, I have to pay the interest, all of that. So how am I feeling in that house? Okay. So because we forgot about the feeling, we only focused on the thing, right? So I'm not saying that, hey, don't buy a big house. Buy a big house, but make sure that you're also feeling good when you're in that house, right? So it's about both things as well as feelings. Okay, so so what are the other things that we are kind of focused on all the time, right? The interesting thing is when it comes to feelings, right, we are not able to articulate it. Things are easier to express because we can think of things like, okay, numbers, right? Profits, sales, all of those are easy to express. But how will you express feelings? It's only I feel good, I don't feel good. But you don't get the words for it, right? It's very difficult to express it. And that's the reason why we have a problem working on the y-axis. We are always focused on the x-axis. What's the goal for this month? What's the profit for this month? How many sales calls did you do? What's the target? That's where the focus is. But remember, what we really want is this and this. It's not a trade-off. It's an and. This and this, right? The feeling and the thing. Okay. So now, how does this become, relevant for business, let's say? Okay. So I think we'll remember, a good example is the Starbucks story, right? So Starbucks was expanding very quickly and so on and so forth. And around 2007, they started noticing that the profit numbers per store was actually going down, even though they were expanding rapidly around the world, right? Profit per store was coming down, a lot of competition, this, that, and so on. And in a short time, the share value dropped by 40%. Okay. So Howard Schultz, who was, kind of in retirement, he was a chairman, but not really an active person in Starbucks, he had to come back. He had to come back to take charge of Starbucks and revive it. And one of the first thing he said was, hey, we need to get customers to love Starbucks back. What is love Starbucks back? Love is a feeling, right? Love Starbucks back. Okay. And so he started noticing a lot of things and started, talking about it. He said, see, we went after efficiency. For example, they had these special packets, right, which would seal the aroma. Okay. And then by sealing the aroma, yes, you protected the aroma, but what was lost was when people were going to Starbucks or going close to Starbucks, there was no smell of coffee, right? So suddenly that feeling, that love for coffee is disappearing, right? Okay. And another example, there are so many of those that he noticed. So another example was they had this special espresso machines that they installed in Starbucks, which were very efficient, but they occupied more space. So suddenly what happened was the customer lost the connect with the barista. So he couldn't see his coffee being made, right? My coffee has to be made in a certain way, and I'm not able to relate with the barista. So the people touch disappeared, right? So how do you measure this? You can't measure people touch. You can't measure, even aroma. Maybe you can, but the feeling that you get when you're walking past. So this is what he meant, that we, lost this. So then he says that, he says this, I'm just going to quote it, success is not sustainable if it is defined by how big you become. Large numbers that once captivated me, 40,000 stores, are not what matter. The only number that matter is one. One cup, one customer, one partner, one experience at a time. One experience at a time. Okay, again, it's a feeling, right? How are people feeling? How is the customer feeling? And he kind of says, the business is not, okay, so he also says that, that we are not in the business of serving coffee to people. We are in the business of people serving coffee. So they are in the business of people. They are not in the business of coffee. Okay, so this is the subtle thing, the feeling thing that we want to get present to. Now, typically when we are doing business, right, and this is the general concept of business, is that, okay, business is about profits. That's the typical, kind of a thought process. But then, that's not really, maybe that's a kind of an outdated idea. Because business really is about creating value. And what is value? Value is really about a feeling. Okay, and that's what we need to remember. So, so when you kind of work on this axis, right? So kind of look at, why the feeling and the numbers. Okay, you start combining these two. So we have to combine this and this. We have to first of all articulate this, and we have to combine it with the number. So that is when you start getting concepts like joy at work. Because work is a lot of tangible, but joy is not. So we say joy at work. And then we kind of start saying, profit. You profit, yes, but you also feel good about that profit. Because if you're not feeling good about the profit, or if you're only focused on the number, results, then what happens? You start getting the behaviors that we're quite used to, right? You go to a hospital and they'll get you to do an MRI, whether it's required or not. Why? Because the MRI machine has to be running to generate profits, right? And you lose the confidence of the patient will go somewhere else, right? And that's what happens. So we need to so profits, yes, but in a responsible manner, right? Results, yes, but we'll feel righteous about that results that we're getting. We're not going to compromise on the values, okay? And I think that is what we need to remember. Those feelings as important as this. And if we want something sustainable, we need to remember both are important, not just this. Now, interestingly, we are in an amazing situation in India, right? Because our freedom fighters taught us this. What did they teach us? It was not about independence from the British. Okay, so that's a thing. Independence from the British is a thing. Okay, but what they really valued was, is it freedom? Right? Is it really freedom? And I'll quote Gandhiji over here, and he says, Swaraj for me means freedom for the meanest of our countrymen. I am bent on freeing India from any yoke whatsoever. I have no desire to exchange king log for king stock. And that is really what freedom is. And that is what kind of differentiates our freedom movement from any other independence struggle which happened. And so they combined the thing with the feeling. Now, getting this thing about articulating feeling is very tough. And that's the reason why what happens is, since we are not able to articulate it, like Howard Schultz, he had to come back to Starbucks. Why? Because only he knew what the feeling was about. So he kind of instinctively knows, hey, this is not right, this is not, this is right. So let's decide in this fashion, let's decide in that fashion, right? Since he has not been able to articulate it, his team members, he has to be there to take decisions. And his team members are not able to take decisions. However much qualified they are, they don't have the same instinct or the feeling that made Starbucks what it is. So that's why he had to come back. And that's the reason why we need to articulate it. First of all, for ourselves. And that is tough. Articulating feelings are tough. But we need to have put in that effort to be able to articulate it. Okay? And once you're able to articulate it, then you can talk about it, you can share it, you can start taking decisions based on that. Okay? For instance, the language will become. So it's about focus. What are you focusing on? Right? So then you start focusing on, a little later, then you start focusing on, for instance, okay, you'll say, when you're talking a review meeting or a sales meeting or something, you'll start saying, okay, you won't say, okay, how many new clients have you met? You won't do that. Okay? Instead, what will you say is, how many new people are we going to be able to serve? Impact. Okay? Or serve. Maybe if it's a wealth management company, you'll kind of say, how many people are we able to make their futures a lot more secure, right? How many people are we impacting in terms of making them feel safe about their investments? So the language changes. So that is what, so it's not about traveling here or here, it's about traveling here in this axis, in this line, okay? And the journey will not be a straight line again, it will be, sometimes we get it, sometimes we don't, sometimes we meet targets, we don't, sometimes we get the feeling right, sometimes we don't, like any journey, right? We will be going like this and this, but we need to kind of anchor ourselves around this. So what we need over here is a guiding light, right? Maybe a North Star. A North Star which says, hey, this is where we are going, okay? And that consists of both the feeling and the thing. Okay, and how do we get this North Star? Okay, to anchor yourself, to kind of say, hey, this is where we want to go. Is, okay, luckily we have some tools in LEC, right? So we start with the golden vibe, so that the entrepreneur himself is able to articulate for what really is driving them. Because that becomes the inspiration, the source from which the purpose of the organization gets created, right? And the purpose of the organization, again, is what, like the North Star, is going to say, hey, this is what it's about. This is why. And all the decisions that we take, whether it be communication, whether it be hiring decisions, whether it be what metrics are we measuring, everything kind of gets, aligned to that North Star. Okay, and that really is the journey. And that is what creates a sustained organization, because it's about any organization which is going to last is about creating emotional value. Right? It needs to create an emotional value, not just some transaction. And that is what this North Star is going to provide. Okay? And so, welcome to this journey of finding your own North Star for your organization and slowly and steadily going towards that. And wish you all the success in the world.